Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I'm your host, Jason Cercone, and today we're going to talk about how to plan your 2021 podcasting goals. Whenever the calendar turns over to a new year, that's typically the time that people start setting New Year's resolutions for themselves. This is the year they're going to lose weight, or quit smoking, or cut out sweets, whatever. And you know where this is going because you've heard it and maybe even experienced it 1,000 times. By February, those resolutions are dead. Why? Because just saying your New Year's resolution is X or Y isn't enough. The only way you can truly bring change to your world is to create a habit. And a habit doesn't form overnight. Hell, it doesn't even form in 21 days like many people believe. One of the best books I've ever read, and one I cannot recommend to you enough, is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And they also have a great podcast hosted by Jeff Woods that you should listen to as well. But in The One Thing, they tell us that it takes 66 days to form a habit. So yeah, it's easy to bail on your New Year's resolutions if you aren't taking the time to plot out how you're going to accomplish them and how the steps that go into accomplishing them will become habits in your everyday life. This applies to podcasting as well. No matter where you're at on your personal podcasting timeline, you need to be working towards something. You may want to break a certain number of downloads per episode so your podcast becomes more attractive to advertisers. Or you may want to generate X amount of business revenue with your podcast being the catalyst. It's all relative to what makes you and your podcast successful. But if you aren't aiming at something clear and concise, the likelihood of your podcast succeeding is slim to none. If you listen to past episodes of Pod Theory, one of the biggest things that I preach is planning your podcast out during those initial stages. But once you've built that foundation, that's just the beginning. Continuing to challenge yourself to reach certain plateaus is a non-negotiable. It's the only way your efforts will grow and evolve. If you haven't yet set up your podcasting goals for 21, here's a very easy template to use that will help you do so today. And if you have already set up your goals, congratulations, that's awesome. But stay tuned, maybe you'll learn something new that will help you out. The first thing you want to do is define and write down what your goal actually is. From there, write down the date that you're setting the goal, the date you want to accomplish it by, and the date your goal was reached. Obviously, at this point, you're going to leave the last item blank. Now, this process can also be used for setting personal goals as well, but for the sake of our conversation and keeping it geared towards podcasting, write down the type of goal that this is. And in this case, it's professional. Now comes the part where you need to put some thought into your goal. Ask yourself the following question. What value will accomplishing this goal contribute to my life? This applies meaning to your goal. Instead of just words in the air, you're showing yourself the actual reasons why accomplishing this goal has to happen, and failing to see it through to completion simply cannot happen. Get as long-winded with your answer to this as you can. The more value you bring to the surface, the more fired up you're going to be about accomplishing the goal in hand. Next is the most critical element to this process, the action steps. Ask yourself, what are the action steps I need to take to accomplish this goal? As you define your action steps, make these steps attainable. Don't set yourself up for failure. Build your action plan based on what you know you can accomplish each day, each week, and each month to bring you closer to reaching your goal. And last but certainly not least, track your progress. Look at your goals daily and evaluate the action steps that you took. Do the same weekly and do the same monthly. Are you on track to accomplish your goal in the time frame that you set? If not, make adjustments. Don't just throw in the towel, because as we know, that's what happens when so many people set New Year's resolutions. They throw in the towel, and when things don't go 100% the way they want out of the gates, they're out. Don't let that happen to you, and don't let that happen to the goals that you set. Setting your podcasting goals, or any goal that you set for that matter, should not seem like a chore. It should be exciting because you're creating the map that will help your efforts grow and evolve. If you take the time to do this properly and discipline yourself to focus on your goals each and every day, great things lie ahead for you and your podcast. And that will do it for today's session of Pod Theory. If you haven't done so already, take a second to hop over to Facebook and check out the new Podcaster Syndicate group that I set up. Just search Podcaster Syndicate and join. It's free, it's real, and it's spectacular. Good talk. I'll see you back here tomorrow. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.